Hi, I want to I would like to ask you a kind of a narrow question on Afghanistan. You have answered somebody else's question.
I'll try to give you a narrow answer.
About that we should, we need to finish the job there and try to bring the troops home. Originally, it seems as though Al-Qaeda was being given safe haven by the Taliban to plan and launch 9/11 attacks. Subsequently, we went in and chased Al-Qaeda out, defeated the Taliban, and installed President Karzai. Taliban are admittedly not in Afghanistan anymore, and Karzai is the Al-Qaeda is no longer in Afghanistan anymore, and the Taliban, which is basically a local Afghani military political group, is attempting to gain power there. And I guess what I'm wondering is, what are we still doing there? Since it really doesn't seem to have much to do with war on terror. Al-Qaeda, who is our obvious adversary there, is not there. They're in Pakistan, they're in other places. And the Taliban are really an internal matter that really have nothing to do with us. They're not harboring terrorists anymore. I just was wondering what we were doing there and what you thought the mission was and what finishing the job in Afghanistan really constituted.
I think there's a lot of concern in this country with the fact that the mission right now is not clearly stated. And that's caused great concern. I believe that the mission should be to eliminate terrorism, and that we can do that in a very surgical, way, limiting the liability to our individual troops and to human life. And I think that we ought to complete the mission, which now should be to complete the training so Afghanistan can stand on its own, and then bring our American troops home. And I think that can be done rather quickly. I think it should be done quickly. I wouldn't publicly specify a timeline because I don't think that makes sense. But I think we're at the point now where, with the intelligence gathering that we have, with the recent capture and kill, we've got a very good idea as to where the individual networks are, where the individual terrorists are, and where those individual threats are. And I think we go after those individuals. And again, a very surgical-like manner. And I think that the war is at that point. So I would like to see the troops return home. I would like to see that mission completed in Afghanistan. But I think it needs clarity from the President to the country as to what he feels this mission is at this point. But I see it as completing the training and bringing our troops home.
Okay, the next question is from Don Hall from Kearsarge, or excuse me, not from Kearsarge, from Eaton Center, and it's with regard to job creation.
Yeah, what can we do in this country to get more jobs created? The only thing I can see is that financially is slowly eroding the dollar. That's also going to have an inflationary impact. And as he grows it, he's going to appreciate the yuan, and maybe we won't be getting so many things from China. And I haven't done to read something that maybe something is coming back because of other problems with supply. But that's important. What can we do?
Well, there's a couple different things we can do. The unemployment rate is still hovering around 9%. I think most of us feel it's unacceptable. That doesn't include what is not calculated, which is the underemployment number. anyone who had a job at, say, $1,000 a week and now is employed at a number less than that. Or those who are no longer searching for a job because they've been out of work so long that they've decided to either retire or just change their lifestyle. So I think that 9% number is actually a bit higher. When you also look at the growth rates for the country, we're hovering around 2-3%. It should be in a strong economy, 4 or 5, and even 6%. We're not there, and we're not any closer to getting there. So I think legislatively, policy-wise, there's a few things we can do. I think job creators need predictability from Washington. And what that means is they want to know what their tax policy is going to be, they want to know what their regulatory policy is going to be, and they want to know those two things because as they're trying to determine whether they want to borrow money or utilize existing capital that they might be holding back, they're not sure how they're going to, of those dollars, and how much they're going to have to give Washington. So, and the third would be healthcare policy. They don't have that predictability yet with healthcare policy. So just on those three items, we can give certainty to job creators. And in New Hampshire, when we talk about job creator, we're talking about a small business owner. 75% of our economy in New Hampshire is driven by the small business owner. We're talking about 500 or less employees. That is extremely significant. Back home, there's a couple things. I sent out, about a month ago now, a survey to 1,000 random businesses in the 1st Congressional District. And I asked a whole host of questions. But the notion of the survey was, what do you want us to do in Washington and what do you want us not to do? They asked for a reduction in their tax liability. They asked for relief on regulatory policy. And they asked for predictability. And 80%, I thought this was a pretty overwhelming number. I didn't think it would be this high, but 80% of those that responded said that the stimulus had no positive value or effect on their company or their business. 80%. Now, it's not a scientific poll, so I'm not suggesting it is. But I'm trying to reach out to the business owners in New Hampshire and ask them, what is it that we can do? So, in a response to that, I've decided that I'm going to hold 2 job fairs in the district in June. In the fall, I'm going to hold a manufacturers summit as well as an innovators conference. And the idea here is let's connect any individual who's looking for a job with someone who may have a job, number one. Number two, let's emphasize the positive things that we're doing in New Hampshire from a job creation perspective, from a manufacturing perspective. And thirdly, as an innovator, if you have an idea and you want to bring it to market, I want to give you the best opportunity to make that happen and to put investors in a room with intellectual property attorneys in a room and other potential investors or other businesses that might be interested. That's good for New Hampshire's economy and good for potential business growth. So there's 2 fronts, at least from a federal perspective. What I'm trying to do here in New Hampshire and then legislatively the policies that we're trying to enact down in Washington.
Next question is from Chuck Brooks from Freedom, New Hampshire. And it's with regard to eliminating oil subsidies.
Congressman, the oil companies seem to be making these wonderful profits, and they have all along. They don't seem to ever lose. When the gas prices go up, they seem to come out with an announcement of windfall profits that they've made. And I'm sure that it's very good for their company, it's very good for their shareholders, but those of us in the Northeast who are heating our homes with oil, those of us who live in rural communities and have to drive some miles to go to work, it's just not so good for us. And I'm not saying they shouldn't make a profit. I'm just saying that I don't believe that they should be making a profit on our backs, that is, on the public dole. And in the economic conditions that we're in, I'm appealing to you as my rep to put an
ago, Speaker Boehner went on one of the talk shows on Sunday morning. He was asked this question, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, we ought to look at eliminating these subsidies. And there was a frenzy in Washington. Everybody was sort of up in arms. I think it was yesterday, it might have been today. Today was yesterday. The Senate took up a bill to eliminate the subsidies, and as I understood the bill, it was a $21 billion savings over 10 years, and it failed the Senate. Here's, specifically on the subsidy, which is a tax provision in the code, here's what I would suggest. You're going to eliminate that, and also eliminate the lease payments that they have to make, offset it, and be fair. And secondly, the larger,
What party defeated the subsidy bill?
I'm sorry?
I believe it was a Republican filibuster in which the Democrats were unable to reach a 60-bill cloture measure and defeated it.
Well, they took, the Senate took a vote. The Senate took a vote. I know that Ben Nelson, Mary Landrieu,
Conservative Democrats.
well, okay, but look, I'm not interested in blaming here. I'm just telling you what the facts are. You know, there were Republicans who voted for it, and there were Republicans who voted against it. There were Democrats who voted for it, and there were Democrats who voted against it. What I'm trying to provide is alternative solutions that make sense. And the simple point on that specific issue is if you're going to get rid of that tax benefit to those 5 companies, let's also eliminate the lease payments and make it fair.
That's a giveaway. That's a giveaway to Joyce. Giveaway.
The larger question here.
That's the large question.
The
It's a
larger
giveaway.
question is $4 a gallon for gas. It's unacceptable.
And record ExxonMobil's profit.
We are producing about 80 million barrels of oil per day worldwide. And we're roughly utilizing the same amount. Here in America, we're utilizing about 19 million barrels, and we're only producing 7. Those numbers need to get close together. There's 2 ways to do it: increase production and reduce consumption. And I think we have a responsibility to do both. And what that means is we ought to be exploring for oil in this country and off of our coasts and be self-sufficient. And I would add this. There's something wrong with policy when a Spanish oil tanker is going to be off the coast of Cuba exploring for oil in an area where the President of the United States says 50 miles away from Florida, we're not allowed to.
Next question is from Beth Furicello from Jackson with regard to the CBO.
Representative Guinta, when the Obama administration quoted the CBO figures showing cost savings from the Affordable Care Act for the next 10 years, Republicans land-basted the CBO as being totally inaccurate. This week you sent out a mailing that says, according to the nonpartisan CBO, Medicare will go bankrupt by 2021. The Ryan bill that you voted for would eliminate the guarantee of medical care for seniors in America by replacing Medicaid with vouchers that seniors would use to pay big insurance companies. Also, according to the CBO, the vouchers won't be nearly enough to pay for their care, which you have told us tonight they would be.